and welcome to the Essential Property Podcast with your hosts, Paul Samuda and Amanda Woodward. With 45 years of combined experience in the world of property buying, selling, investing and developing, they are here to share with you their knowledge in the Stoke-on-Trent, Newcastle-under-Lyme and Crewe property market. Let's get started.
Hello and welcome to episode 69 of the Essential Property Podcast. Today I'm alone, it's just me, Amanda Woodward, and I'm talking all things international investors. So if you are overseas but you own UK property, then this is for you. And I want to specifically talk about what's happening in the UK rental market as it relates to international investors, the new legislation that's coming in May, and how international investors can protect their assets going forward. So let's talk Renters' Rights Act 2025. Now, let's just mention that this is what I'm talking about for those of you that have property in England. Those of you that have property in Wales and Scotland have slightly different rules. This is more focused of those of you that have property in England. But what I'll talk about at the end in terms of how we can actually help you does apply for anyone who has property across the UK. So look, here's the truth. The legislation changes are significant for everyone. But international landlords, I think, are just that little bit more exposed depending on who you're working with and if you've got any contacts on the ground. Because it's very hard to manage risk that you can't sort of see, touch and feel. And if you don't have anybody reliable on the ground, small issues can become big issues. Not because you're a bad landlord, but because distance can create some delays and some assumptions. So first things first, date for your diary is the 1st of May 2026. That's when all the new reforms come into play. We did have a couple that came in over Christmas, a little Christmas present for us all, but the majority are coming in on the 1st of May 2026. And look, these rules apply no matter where you are based in the world. You know, we've got investors in Singapore and Hong Kong, Malaysia, parts of Africa, as far as Australia and New Zealand, different parts of Europe, North and South America. So I think we're hitting pretty much every continent in our business. But no matter where you're based, these rules do apply for you. So first thing I want to share is that this is an act and not a bill. So it has been put all the way through to law. And as I say, 1st of May is the date that it really kicks in. So the government's guide has set out a package designed to make renting, fairer and more secure, but more so biased towards the tenants. It really is shifting the power and making everything sort of process and evidence driven. But in a bit of a nutshell, the things that are going that I think you need to be aware of is that if an agent writes to you and says, we're going to issue a Section 21 to evict a tenant from a property, that's going to be banned, completely abolished, in fact, after May. So there's no sort of, I would just like to remove this tenant from a property anymore. You can't do that. There's going to be no such thing as an AST. So if you usually email your agent and say, can I get the AST for this property? There's not going to be any more short hold tenancies. Everything is moving towards the periodic tenancy. We actually don't have a copy yet of what the government wants us to issue. So in May, your agent should be preparing to issue all your tenants with new contracts. We are eagerly awaiting the draft new contract, which the government said we won't have until March. So we've only got between March and May for us to contact about 600 odd tenants. Some of them your tenants, some of them tenants that will belong to your agent wherever you are based in the country. And those tenants need to be updated with the new agreement. I know international investors probably sell properties quicker than UK-based investors. And the reason I say that is sometimes international investors have bought deals from sourcing agents that might not be quite as cracked up as they thought they were. And the international investors think, actually, perhaps I'll sell and I'll just reinvest in a different part of the country. But selling is going to be more challenging because once a tenant moves into a property, that tenancy is protected for 12 months. So selling of that property becomes a little bit more restricted. We need to work out if it's sold to another landlord and the tenancy is protected, if that's okay. But perhaps you just want to put it on the market and sell, on the traditional market, which you won't be able to do that because you've got a tenant and you can't issue a Section 21 to remove that tenant before it's sold. So selling is definitely more challenging. It will need to be planned better, and sort of quick sales may be a thing of the past. So I think that's probably the most important part that I've mentioned so far, that you need to be aware of. Rent in advance is limited. So previously, where we would ask a tenant maybe to pay 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months up front, depending on their situation, that's not allowed. There's going to be a new database that all landlords need to be part of, including our international landlords. You will need to be part of this database. Properties will need to comply to certain regulation. And there's even small things like pets. I mean, we're not allowed to say you can't have a pet in a property. So let's say you're a buy-to-let landlord and a tenant wants to move in, 5 dogs and a snake, they can. So that's just a snapshot of what's happening. Now, whether you're based overseas or not, if you're UK based, all the same rules apply. But, we have an international property ourselves, and the further you are away, the less you feel connected to it, and sometimes you aren't always up to date on all the rules and regs and what's going on, and you are relying on for the people that are on the ground, to keep you protected. And we've got a whole bunch of international investors, and we're managing their properties like they're our own. We make sure that they fully comply. We do everything that we would do as if it was our own property, but not all agents do that. So that's just something that you might want to perhaps pencil in to speak to your agent to make sure that they're up to date with what's happening and that they're protecting your asset. So let's have a look at some of the sort of international investor risks. One, you're losing that easy exit of this tenant's messing around. It's time to do a Section 21. Let's ask them to leave. That's scrapped. The impact is that if you want to ask them to leave, you need to go down some discretionary grounds, like do they owe rent, like are they being antisocial, which, you have to prove in court. And as an international investor, I think the last email you want to receive from an agent is to say that we're going to court on behalf of your property. That's really sort of a worrying email to receive. But the Section 21 is going. And just to reiterate that point, please do get in touch with your agents wherever you're investing in the country and just ask them to share with you, what are they doing in terms of the Renters' Rights Bill? What's the latest updates? How are they making any changes in their business? Because we are making a truckload of changes in the business to get ready for this. We started, last year. This is not a last minute thing. We started well into last year in terms of preparing for this. So find out what it is that they're doing. We're integrating quite a lot of AI into the business to enable us to analyze things quicker and, get ready, be nimble, be ready, be prepared. And you just want to make sure that your agent's doing the same. Risk number 2, selling becomes a lot harder. We've already covered that, really. Risk number 3 is that if you are overseas and you perhaps don't have eyes on your property, you might not be aware of any disrepair issues. Now, one of the big things we get challenged with landlords is spending on maintenance. And international investors, you can't see, touch and feel the property. You're relying on your agents to manage the maintenance of the property. Old terrace houses, particularly in the north of England, they require a lot of maintenance. They require a lot of call outs for heating and leaks and damp and roof and all the rest of the things that come with it, and the high turnover HMO tenants where there's a lot of foot traffic through the property. If your agent is not doing maintenance jobs and your landlord statement every month is kind of just the rent and there's not much maintenance taking place, whilst that's a good thing in terms of your cash flow, I'd be querying the quality of the property. When was the last time that they did a bit of a walkthrough? When was the last time they did maintenance jobs? You should be seeing maintenance charges on your statements. And if you're not, that is a red flag. So I'd certainly look into that with your agent. Risk number 4, I would say, is in terms of rent increases. So previously, if there was a nice little jump in demand, and perhaps an increase in inflation, landlords would put up their rents, and rightly so. That now is going to be a little bit more difficult. You have to give 2 months notice to increase the rent, and then the tenant doesn't have to accept the increase, and they can then dispute it, take it to a tribunal and ask a judge to decide whether that increase is fair or not. And even if by the time you get to court or to the tribunal and the judge says, yes, I agree with this rent, it is fair, you don't even get it backdated for all the months that you've been waiting for it to get actually reviewed by the tribunal. So that's a bit of a challenge. It means that everything has to be a little bit more planned in advance. I mean, we did quite a lot of rent increases from COVID to now. Rents have increased probably by about 25%. in the last 5 years, about 5% a year. We're going to have to consider how we're going to do rent increases going forward. We can't just put them up and up and up anyway, because tenants don't have an open checkbook and they might not be able to afford it. So it's got to be, within sort of a good range of the market rent. And if it's above market rent, the tribunal will throw it out anyway. So there's a lot of changes. So it might be worth asking your agent, what's your plan going forward for rental increases, and just see what they say. Now, when you are overseas, your power team is the asset. Yes, the bricks and mortar is the asset, but the people on the ground are the asset as well. Running that sort of transparent management company to ensure that you feel comfortable as an overseas investor as to what's happening on the ground. So whether that's maintenance, repairs, compliance, tracking. I mean, another thing we get a bit of a hard time for is compliance, because we do every single certificate that is required for HMO compliance. And that's not just gas and electric, that's also the annual smoke alarm service, the annual emergency lighting service, the annual PAT test. This is things that other HMO agents actually don't do. They think just the gas cert and the EICR is sufficient, but it's not. A fire risk assessment, checking the fire doors. These are all the things that we have to have in place, renewing of the license. And all these things do come at a cost, and the professionals like the gas safe engineers and the electricians aren't cheap, but it's what's necessary. We're here to protect you from the council. We're here to protect you from your tenants and make sure that you don't end up in court for doing something wrong. So again, speak to your agent. Perhaps ask for a copy of your certificates. Ours are on request. Most agents don't want a copy, but now would be a good time perhaps to ask your agent, can you as the landlord get a copy of the certificates? We send them out on request immediately, because they're done, they're in the file, and they can be sent out at just a moment's notice. Okay, what else? Let's go into affect international investors. So I think you should probably start to look at your portfolio performance, which I find international investors do actually do, because they're not there on the ground seeing it. They do seem to do a lot more sort of paper-based analysis. But I'd start to look at the performance of your properties, perhaps grade them, green, amber, red. Green is performing well, low risk. Amber is perhaps any compliance issues that you might have, and red would be something that perhaps is underperforming or is a high risk property. Maybe it needs refurbishment or there's some compliance issues. Do a compliance audit. Let's check on the certificates, make sure that you're all up to date. Speak to your agent. Is there anything that's missing? If so, get it done straight away. And empower yourself with the knowledge of the new laws that are changing, because yes, you might have an agent, but sometimes you need to manage a managing agent to make sure that they're doing a good job. So bring yourself up to speed. And in the show notes of this podcast, I'll put a couple of links to the government's updates on and around the renters' rights. At Essential Property, we have also created a renters' rights audit checklist, which is a very thorough checklist that you can use to audit your properties to make sure that you're ready for the 1st of May. So, you should do that even as an international investor. Audit your properties, and any information that's missing, speak to your agent so you feel comfortable that you're in the know with what's going on. So that's really my summing up on the international investor side of things. I do want to share that for 2026, we have a new service which is called an International Investor Portfolio Review. We've had the pleasure of working with investors across the globe, and sometimes their properties aren't always as good as they thought they were when they bought them. Perhaps they bought through a sourcing agent who maybe slightly overpromised, or they've bought something and the market's changed and they need to pivot a little bit. And maybe a different strategy is required. Maybe they want to sell, or maybe your properties are working so well that you want to continue to buy in the UK and you want to grow, but you're not quite sure, what area you should be investing in or what strategy you should be employing. So if you want to have a chat with a UK-based investor, someone like myself or Paul, who's got a huge amount of experience working with people overseas and investing in the UK, then just drop us a message. You can go to our website, which most of you know. I'll put it in the show notes. It's essential-management.co.uk. And let's just have a chat. We can have a quick Zoom just to get to know each other, a bit of a discovery call, and we'll let you know if the review's right for you or not. It might be that you just need a couple of pointers, or it might be that you need something a little bit more in depth. Make sure you add the 1st of May 2026 to your diary. Also message me for the audit. It's a completely free download, very thorough. You can start to audit your properties and make sure that you're ready and prepared for the changes as well. So thanks for listening. I've thoroughly enjoyed sharing this with you, and I'll see you on the next episode.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode, and if so, please hit subscribe and share with those who you think would enjoy it too. To get in touch with Paul and Amanda directly, please visit their website www.essentialpropertyoptions.co.uk for more information. We look forward to sharing with you on the next episode.